Luke today begins his gospel with Jesus on a journey. And the journey is always to Jerusalem, because in Jerusalem is where Jesus suffered and died. And so for Luke, he's always pointing us to that direction. And that ties into Isaiah, because ever since God created and shared his revelation with us, he always wanted us to be saved. And throughout all the prophets, Abraham, Noah, and Isaiah and all the others, they all had the same message, because it all came from the one God. I want to save you. Listen to me. And so that's the context of our gospel today. That Jesus gives this beautiful story. Because this person is probably asking a question that we've all asked. How many will be saved? Who will go to heaven? And we'd like to think that everyone would. But sometimes others don't respond to it. And that's the context of our gospel story today. And so let me give you a little modern day example. Now, I always think Jesus says everything perfectly. So my example is not to correct anything, because the Lord already said it perfectly, but to maybe amplify it in a modern day context. So let's just say you went to school with someone from kindergarten through current. And throughout those many years together, you've been on the ups and downs. You knew them through elementary school. You knew them in high school. You played the same sport. You dated. You were there for each other as relationships came and went. Even as adulthood and young adulthood, you were there in those significant moments. When they got their first job, when they lost their job. At every moment of that person's life, you and that other person connected. There was never a time when you didn't know what was happening in each other's lives, because you engaged in that. You shared. Regardless of distance, you were there present to each other. That's the first person. The second person you met in kindergarten, you kind of knew each other, and you always took the effort in order to share your life with them. Unfortunately, it wasn't always reciprocated. You would share the good, the bad, and the ugly with that other person. They might respond, they might call, but possibly not. And it was always your initiative that caused that relationship to continue forward in a certain way. But one day, later on in life, a tragedy happens to both of those individuals. Someone dies in the family, someone loses a job, something happens to those. And they come knocking at your door because they've gone out of their resources. They've lost their job, someone has died, they need your help. Now, we'd like to think that we help every single person, and we try. But like here in the parish, each of you have a limited amount of resources. I don't think there's anybody that's independently wealthy here. If you are, let me know. We have some projects. And so we have to use our time and resources carefully, because we can't exhaust everything we have, but we try to help everyone that comes to us. But using those two individuals, they both come to you. Which one are you more readily to give without expecting a return of that significant amount of money? The first one or the second? How many are more ready to help? I know you want to help everyone. We'll just go with that. You're good Catholic people. You believe in Jesus. You want to help every person. We established that. But you only have so much money. Which one do you think is going to get a more favorable response? The first or the second? How many think the first? How many think the second? How many want to help everybody? That's where all your hands should go up. Okay? And God wants to help everyone. And God isn't limited by resources. We are. God never tires. We get tired. We eventually run out of whatever it is. But God is infinite. But what Jesus is saying to us in the gospel is that we also need to respond. And the reason we want to help the person who we have journeyed with, ups and downs, every moment of our life, is because we've engaged with that person. We know their situation. We have communicated and shared our lives together, and we're a little more open to helping that individual. Not that we don't want to help the other, but we're not as connected to them. The good thing for us is that God is connected to each one of us. God never rejects us. We are limited by our just human frailty and sin, but God is not. Jesus is trying to remind us of how important it is for us to keep our relationship with him, how to grow in that relationship with him. And today in our gospel passage, we heard how the person said, but we came and ate with you. We came and listened to you. But they didn't really accept and respond to him. They knew about him, but that's about all. And I would say that that second person was more of an acquaintance. Someone we kind of know, but not really. But the first person is the one that we know very well. They are like our brother or our sister. They are part of our family, even though not biologically. God wants us to have a healthy, deep relationship with him. Because someday we will get to those pearly gates. Someday we will meet God when our time comes. And wouldn't you want God to say, oh, I know you perfectly. I've had a relationship with you since the beginning of your life. You've always engaged in a relationship with me. You have taken the faith, worked with it, used it, helped other people. Welcome to the kingdom. I don't think you want to be that person who gambles and says, oh, gosh, I hope it's good enough. When I was teaching, that would be kind of the student that says, can I at least get a D? Because I'm almost at the F. Why not strive for the A? Work as if it meant everything in life. Jesus is trying to encourage us to prepare our life, to do everything we can to build that relationship with him. Because throughout all of salvation history, from the prophets of the Old Testament to today, God has always wanted a healthy, spiritual, deep relationship with us. And won't we want the same? And so let us take that opportunity during this week to deepen that relationship through our prayer, through our meditation of the scriptures, through the opportunities that God gives to us to help others, so that at the end of our lives, the Lord may welcome us into his kingdom.